Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today for this Kaleidoscope session. I am Shubhangi, and I'm part of the branding and communications team here at AND. And I welcome everyone to this Kaleidoscope session. Today's session is led by Dhwani. But before we dive right into her presentation and she talks about very interesting stuff that you're all waiting for, I would like to talk a little bit about AND Academy and Kaleidoscope, the series that we have here. So, AND is for those of you who are part of AND already, you know that AND is a design upskilling platform which was launched by the Indian Institute of Art and Design, which is a brick and mortar institution here in New Delhi, and is the online arm of that. But unlike IID, we offer professional courses in design in the domains of graphic design, UXI design, and interior design. Coming to Kaleidoscope, Kaleidoscope is a series of online masterclasses that explore the myriad perspectives of design. Each talk or discussion is conducted by a design maestro capable of breathing life into pixels and colors, and we're sure that it will leave you wanting more. Today's masterclass is led by Dhwani. Dhwani is an illustrator and a graphic designer from Mumbai. She studied from Sir J.J. School of Applied Art, Mumbai, and National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. She enjoys working on editorial illustrations, non-fiction comics, and publication design projects. She has designed multiple handmade books and children's books for publishing house Tara Books. She's presently teaching at Dot School of Design, Chennai. So with that, I hand over to Dhwani to just take it ahead.
Thank you so much for introducing me and for inviting me for this session. So, like Shubhangi said, I have been doing illustration and book design projects and a little bit of comics and branding and packaging over the past few years. But I'm here today not to talk about my commercial projects, but things that I have done in my uh, free time for myself, and how that has been a journey that has in the recent years informed my approach to design, and also how I want to take my design journey forward. So a lot of times, once you get into design college, like every piece that you make, you kind of weigh it as, is it a portfolio piece, or will this activity advance my career in any way? And somehow that becomes the only lens of looking at the work, whether is it a worthy exercise, is it worth investing time in this? And sometimes you kind of forget why you had been drawn to the practice of writing and drawing, and what joy or what benefits it would offer you. And sometimes a little something will suddenly come your way and shake your world, and then it'll remind you of things that make you happy, and you keep finding your ways back to it. So that is what I would like to focus in this session, of how sketchbooking and journaling has helped me in the past few years. So just sorry, one sec. Yeah, so a couple of years back, a friend of mine showed me this book called Syllabus by Linda Berry. She's an American cartoonist, and people who have heard me before know that I keep talking about her a lot. And she speaks about how, there's something more beyond looking at drawing by just the binary question of is it good or does it suck? And there's a lot in a drawing that can, connect with other people, which sometimes you forget to focus on because you are worrying about, is your line perfect or is it crooked? So she has this very cheeky statement in her book which says, what happens to a drawing when we dislike it? And there's a tiny little character that says it survives your dislike. So that is something that I've been trying to remind myself and some of my students, when we go into this overthinking state, and it paralyzes us to not do any work at all. And sometimes going back to Linda Berry helps me remember what it is to, like, put pen to paper and, like, let it just guide the process, right? So I started journaling a couple of years back. I didn't know that time that it was called visual journaling, but I was keeping a diary of some of the things that was happening in my life, and I did that project with a friend. Her name is Ramya, and we were both living in two different cities. And we, like, after college, we didn't have enough time to, like, talk. So when you catch up, only the big milestones get shared, or like the big problems get shared, but the smaller details in your everyday life somehow doesn't happen. And we decided that, okay, let's journal about it, let's draw and write about it, and then we can share stories. So I think it started on that front, but then I realized that the book was being very, very calm and patient and interested in my life, which sometimes it's hard to get somebody else to listen to it. Like, what are the small things that happens which are not very like dramatic or big, but you are still allowed to talk about it on the page, and also allowed me to edit out what I wanted to remember from a week that has gone by, like what memories I wanted to hold close, what were the things I would like to remember a few years later. So I started drawing every day. Um, so this is my friend Ramya, and this is her journal. So she is an animator, so she had a very cartoony style, and I was a typographer, so my layouts were very formal and like straight, but with a little bit of doodles. So I'll quickly share a video of my journal. Give me a second. Yeah, if you guys can see the video clearly, can one of you just give a thumbs up or something like the icon? Thank you. Mm, there's one more video. I'll go back to the presentation. One second. So we keep collaborating every few years or every few months. So initially it began when we had both, bought tablets and like Wacom tablets, and we were exploring digital drawing, and we were like, okay, we were cribbing a lot. Like I used to have a phase where I was cribbing about how I'm constantly procrastinating about things, and she had some other issues that were like, troubling her, and we started writing letters to each other, which were like both writing and drawing. And we would like, I would write a letter to her, and then she would respond with a doodle letter, and we would keep doing that. And then after a few months of it, we just stopped. And then suddenly, after many, many years, we started this journaling thing. And we did this for 6 months. And besides that, satisfaction of feeling productive and like showing up to the sketchbook every day and drawing and writing, it also started making me feel emotionally more balanced. Like I was being more mindful to my everyday. I was noticing details. If I was feeling a little overwhelmed, then I was reaching out for the book as a way to calm me down. And also, like, memory can be like elusive. Like you think that something somebody said you'll remember forever, and then after 2 days it's foggy. So again, like holding those memories in the book felt very precious, that I would love to go back and see what a version of me few years back was thinking, and what were the issues that were worrying me then, or what was my perspective on life. Has it shifted? Is it still the same? So that ways it has been like really fun, like, leafing through the journal again. And later we also decided to make a zine out of it. So we called it Kya Hal Chal, and it's a two-way zine. One side it is like a selection of diary pages from my friend, and the other side was mine. So that has been one fun project. And I did it for 6 months and then took a break. And then every once in a while, I keep going back to it whenever I feel like, I need a visual record of whatever's happening in my life. Uh, there are other ways in which I have been using my sketchbook. This is a little embarrassing to share, but I think it has helped me, so I'll share it with you guys. So a colleague of mine was very heavily into bullet journaling for a while, and I thought, let me do that as well. And I had this huge task list that I wanted to do. But during COVID, I was struggling a lot to function at all. Like even basic everyday tasks like showering or cooking or watering the plants was fine, like, very hard. And I was just staying in bed. So I thought, let me also do a bullet journaling thing. But very quickly, I wasn't doing most of the tasks, and they were just like red crosses and very few ticks. And that made me even more like demotivated. So I was like, okay, let me come up with a fun version of this to-do list. So what I did was, sorry, it's one, skipped a little ahead, sorry. Yeah, I came up with a grid notebook, and I assigned the things I want to do every day, and I came up with a small motif or pattern for it. So whenever I do a task, I get to fill up that box. And I cunningly was like, okay, if some days I don't do it, it's okay. It's like negative space is important for a design to feel balanced. So that is a way I was like, tricking myself into doing the work. And there were a day or two, I like, if you see watering the plants, there is one hidden thing. I preempted it. I was like, okay, I will just draw it, so I have to water it, and then I forgot. So then I had to cover it up. So then I put a reminder that please don't do it unless you actually finish the task. So it's very silly, but there were genuinely some days I did something only because I wanted to not break the chain, or I wanted the pattern to look a certain way. And it worked for a while, and then it stopped working. So then I moved on to other projects. But recently I again tried it. So I quit my job and I was at home for a month, and I was afraid that have not having a imposed structure will also make me like, crazy, and like I won't be doing basic things. So then I started doing this thing again. So there are some new icons now. I was doing a writing workshop. So there was a thing of, are you doing your writing assignments, or are you planning for your workshops, or are you eating a fruit a day, or are you going for a walk? So if I go for a walk, I have a tree pattern. And if am keeping a walk diary, so if I do the diary and the walk, then the orange color comes in. So there are lots of different levels you can introduce for yourself. So talking to my family, I have lines and dots. So if it is just a WhatsApp conversation, it is dots. But if it is a phone call, it is lines. So sometimes I can see that, oh, I've spoken to my father every day, but I haven't spoken to my mom for a week. So it was interesting to do this, embarrassing to share, but I feel it has offered me a couple of things. So that is something I would like to elaborate on. So whether it is an old habit, I want to make sure it stays, or whether I want to initiate new ones. And even like 10 minutes of doing this every night meant some time away from my phone. And a lot of things that I have as goals, they keep running in my head and like tiring me out. So sometimes just putting it on paper gives my mind a break. And like certain things like, okay, did I like track my expenses, or did I call this person? Certain kind of things are basic things, but some of the things I'm like, okay, if I do this, I will feel a little bit more of an adult. So it's again like small tasks towards taking care of myself. And when I don't journal for a while, getting back to it is very hard. So doing something like really tiny like this helps me slowly get the courage to do like bigger spreads like what I showed you before, because this is like not intimidating at all. It's just one tiny box to fill up. And I thought like maybe later, once I do this for a couple of months, there might be certain patterns I might be able to notice that, okay, if I cook that day, it's very hard for me to also draw that day. So maybe I should not pressure myself. Or maybe I'm not doing this enough and it is not a good enough excuse. I do have time for this thing, then I should definitely have time for this thing. So I don't know where it will lead to, but it's interesting to collect data like this. At least once in a while. I don't keep a running thing every single day, but every few weeks I come up with this when there are new targets. And I had shared this with a friend, and she said, I don't like to track jobs. Like, I don't want to-do lists. I don't want reminders of what I need to do. But I would like to use this in a completely different context, which I thought was very nice. So she has this thing for small, special moments of joy. So her thing would be like stumbled upon a new poem today, which was really nice, or reconnected with an old friend after a very long time, or woke up feeling cheerful for no reason. So whenever something like this happens, she kinds of tracks it, which I thought was really lovely. Yeah. And yeah. So you were able to see my, were you able to see these things before?
We are still seeing the orange and black.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So moving on, my sketchbook sometimes becomes my travel diary. So I'm really bad with photography.
Dhwani,
Uh,
have you changed your slide? Because we're still seeing the orange and black. We're on that only, right?
no, I've changed my slide.
Yeah, yeah, now,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. So I'm not very good with photography in general. And I'm also quite clumsy with remembering to charge things and like, be prepared with memory card and like, being alert in the moment to capture something. So when I travel, I feel a lot of pressure to like, capture things. And there's this one time I went on a trip and I just didn't take the camera at all. And I just had my sketchbook and I started doodling what happened every day. And later, for the whole group, that diary became like a souvenir for our Ladakh trip. And then slowly I started taking it forward for most of my travel experiences. So what I'm going to share is something I did for my trip to Kashmir in 2016. So what I did was I just took blank sheets of paper and I drew up random squares and rectangles as like they are not comics, but they were mimicking comic panels. And wherever I went somewhere, I would just draw a small detail. So again, like drawing architecture, like completely with perspective and realism was very overwhelming for me, but there were tiny, enduring details that I wanted to remember from that day. And if there was no time to sketch live and if we had to travel immediately, then I would take a picture and then later in the night in the hostel, I would sit and finish drawing that. So this is like the trek we had gone to, and like, a grandmother and a granddaughter I met at the mosque and the conversation we had. And this is a very beautiful cafe I had gone to in Srinagar. And this is a mosque which had a very beautiful window with all the borders. So again, the way I was interacting with the spaces helped shift in some way than clicking pictures, because normally you are just clicking very quickly and going. But when you are drawing, you have to slow down and you have to like really absorb all the details and then try to capture it. It may not translate perfectly, but somewhere you are engaging with the space, and it also leads to conversations. So normally, if you feel shy to strike up a conversation with a stranger, but if you are drawing, somebody will come and talk to you, and then it leads to like interesting connections later. So my sketchbook has, in that sense, allowed for some of those kind of experiences to enrich my life. Like especially like the mosque before, I met an old uncle who, this was downtown Srinagar, and he just offered to take me on his scooter through the neighborhood and show me some of the local places. And it was Ramzan, and he was fasting, but he fed me and then put me back on the bus to go to Dal Lake where my hostel was. So, and it started because I was just sitting in a corner drawing, and he came to chat up. So that again, I felt it was like very beautiful experience. My sketchbook, I feel, is a safe space to keep whining and ranting about the same things over and over again, and it doesn't get fed up. So day after day, when there is nothing new to say, my sketchbook still listens to me. So there are times when you have like bad patches, and there's only so much you can complain to your friends or family because nothing new has happened, but you're still struggling with the same thing. And after a while, it becomes heavy for everybody. But sketchbook is a place where I felt I could do that repeatedly. So these are some pages from like maybe December and Jan earlier this year. Uh, I wasn't sketching to kind of experiment with my drawing. In fact, that was something I've been trying to go back to for a long time. Like I kept thinking I need to experiment and play with my sketchbook, but somehow it was never happening. But when I was going through a tough period, sketchbook was just a way to avoid spiraling. So whenever I would get emotionally overwhelmed and I didn't want to like break into tears, I would then just open the sketchbook and start gisifying. So just like using that black ball pen and like rubbing it against the paper would kind of distract me or calm me down. So some of these drawings, they are just weepy and whiny, but that sketchbook was holding the space for it. So they are like Bollywood songs that are like sad, emo, then like looking for comfort, cribbing a lot. There are so many pages which are kind of similar in the mood, but just slightly different doodles, which kind of reflects like whatever I might have been struggling with at that period. So a lot of times if I allow myself to not fixate upon the style of drawing or is it portfolio worthy piece, Sometimes just drawing helps me take a break from my own mind. And a couple of years back, I had done a short project called Chewing the Cud, where I wanted to use drawing as a way to, expand my worldview. I wanted to read a lot of political articles and essays, but normally when I try to do that, what happens is I open too many tabs and I start skimming through the article and I keep shifting between multiple essays and nothing really stays. So again, drawing was not as a tool to make it like a art piece, but drawing was a way to slow down. Like if I had to read an article and then try to illustrate a part of the article, that might make me really focus and concentrate. And it also became a way to remember the content. So now if I look back at my drawings, just looking at the image itself makes me recollect the entire piece that I had read. So this is a poem that I had illustrated, and this was an essay from a book I was reading about manual scavenging. It was like 100-day project, and every time I took up one short essay or a non-fiction piece, take a little bit of the text and then try to capture it visually. So again, like I'm kind of repeating the same thing, but like sometimes drawing allows you to slow down, and drawing is just a tool or a medium for achieving something completely different than just being like a sample of your skill set. So, and yeah, we all have random thoughts which make no sense, which you are like, okay, if I say this out loud, people will think I'm a weirdo. And my sketchbook was a place to kind of bring that out. So, whatever contradictions are there, I could kind of give it space in my journals. So, things like my mind wants to be in a million places, but my body refuses to cooperate. Or life has been awesome lately and it is killing me. Silly, I know, but I'm afraid saying it will jinx it. So, like, I'm happy, but I'm also afraid it will go away. Random, silly thoughts like that. And I don't really like birthdays, but I have to pretend to be interested so that the people who are doing something for me don't feel let down. Or my inner voice is confusing. It wants different things on different days, and I don't know what's happening. So when you actually talk about these things, it just doesn't go well. But sometimes when you draw it, people find it funny, or there might be somebody else who might say, hey, I relate to this very much. And then you find that, oh, there are some people out there who resonate with similar ideas. So my sketchbook knows how to hold secrets. So the journal that I shared in the first, uh, like the video that I shared, there are lots of things that I have drawn and written and explained in detail, but there are certain things I have just doodled and left. And for somebody, it might just be okay, a random sheep on the page in October. But for me, it would be something I was not comfortable actually elaborating on. But when I see that one single icon, there's a whole lot of things that come back to me. So there are a lot of things. You could be drawing some, even a commercial project, but within that image, you could embed certain things of personal significance, which is a very fun exercise to do. But sometimes drawing things directly is very tough for me. So I try to you go back to very, very basic design elements like lines, dots, shapes. Uh, so I'll give you an example. So this is a feeling that I was struggling with. I didn't want to remember certain kinds of thoughts, and I was trying to keep them away and try to, like, focus on other things. So there are two ways I've captured that struggle. So in the first box, you see that brown squiggly things in the corner. So that was my way of representing that, I'm trying to push this thought away into the corner of my mind, but like worms, it keeps crawling back in. And in the second one, the same feeling I've tried to capture in a completely different way, where each colored line thing is like representing a different strand of thought. But the black color is a thought I'm trying to avoid. And no matter how much I try, it keeps trying to like, come back. So I might try to talk about something different or think about something different, but I can't escape that one thought that's, kind of claiming my headspace. So this way of journaling was something unexpected and unplanned. I was taking an illustration class, and we were doing an exercise on illustrating phobias. And one of my students was getting stuck in very literal, direct representations. And I was like, why don't you try something abstract or symbolic, or just go back to basic lines and shapes? And she came up with something like this. So she was like, okay, this is a kind of a worm that crawls through, but when you touch it, it winds itself into a very tight spiral. And this was her way of saying, like, capturing fear of intimacy. And I was like, this is a great way to journal. If you are designing something for editorial illustrations like book covers or movie posters or newspaper articles, your drawings have to be very clear. They can't be ambiguity. Like everybody has to decode the drawing and the intended message has to be delivered correctly. But when you're journaling for yourself, it can be as ambiguous as you want. So imagine you are keeping a very tiny pocket diary, and every day you spend like literally less than 5 minutes capturing whatever you're feeling. And they are just a bunch of patterns which only make sense to you. So even if there are people who are sneaking and looking through your diary, they will not really be able to understand anything. So privacy, of course, is one thing, but what I also realized is sometimes whatever you may be feeling might be too fresh and too raw, and you yourself may not be prepared to capture it in specific words or specific images immediately. Like you don't want to face the specificity of what you are feeling, yet it's like, bearing on you and you want to lighten yourself. So by just acknowledging it on the page, no matter how indirect it is, it somewhere gives you some sense of lightness. So this is something I have been doing every once in a while. So this is like just having the diary in my backpack is like I may not go to it every day. Like the other journals I might be recording on a weekly basis. This is like more of an emotional toolkit. Like you reach out for the band-aid only when you need it. But just having the book with you is very, very comforting. Like, okay, in certain occasions, you can't reach your friend or you can't reach a close family member or you can't reach your therapist immediately, then there is something you can use to in that moment ground you or like regulate your emotions. So yeah. And I would like to say that I keep telling everybody to use their sketchbooks every day. I am a big advocate of journaling, but it is not something I can keep up on a daily basis, and I don't pretend to either. So I do have periods when I don't feel like reaching out for pen and paper, but somewhere I know that it is something I will find my way back to. So I would initially always like, tell myself, oh, you always abandon something, you always abandon something. And over the years, I've started to say to myself that, if it's important, you will find a way back to it. And that has been a refreshing change of perspective, which is not like, always pointing the finger back at me. Uh, so this is a doodle I had made a couple of years back, which says that sometimes the need to create abandons me completely. And there are these alternating phases of not doing anything. And then when that feeling of creation strikes, then there are just days when I'm like creating nonstop. And I'm not able to tame it into a routine structure of let's draw every day for half an hour. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't happen. So I've just been learning to take advantage of the times when it does happen instead of like constantly beating myself up. And yeah, so all through these years, all the different doodles I have done, projects I have done, I have learned that paper can be really, really patient and it can hold a lot of space for you. It allows you to be imperfect. You can experiment, you can draw. So when I was in college, I was petrified to keep a sketchbook because some of my batchmates had like picture perfect diaries where each page was a masterpiece. And I would just draw on random scraps of paper because it didn't feel like, I cannot ruin a very nice sketchbook. But over time, I've started, not taking it too seriously. But even then, sometimes if I don't like a drawing, I would tear it off. Then I was like, okay, let's not tear pages off. A 200-page diary becomes like 50 pages suddenly, and the binding is wonky. Then I started painting over things and making collage over drawings I don't like. Sometimes I stick it. My recent latest hack is just sleep over it. If you don't like it, even after a day or two, then maybe paint over it, but right in that moment, don't react immediately. And sometimes I do like my drawings after a little time passes. So there are different hacks I keep going to keep myself from like getting overwhelmed and finding ways to create and finding like, pleasure and joy and contention in that exercise. And all of this has, in the recent years, led me to what brings me a lot of joy now. So I started to do 4 years back a series of workshops called Paper is Patient. And based on whatever I have learned through trial and error over the years, I want to share the joy of journaling with everybody. So that's been my like most recent venture that brings me happiness. So there are a bunch of exercises that I do where people use journaling as a tool to either capture their inner worlds, that could be their memories, their feelings, their emotions, or it could be capturing the world around them, or even playing with prompts and not worrying about how to face a blank page. So largely, a lot of my practice now is finding ways to fight creative resistance and finding ways to be creatively resilient. And I think that is where I would like to stop. And I'll be very happy to answer any questions you guys have or anything at all you would like to bring up.
Okay, so we're open for questions now. If you have any questions, I request you to put it in the Q&A box. And then so that we can answer it systematically. I can see some of you have put your comments in the chat box.
Oh.
Okay, while we wait for other people to put in their questions, I had a question which I wanted to ask you. So how did you stumble upon this activity of like journaling and then that became your thing? I understand that you come from a designing background and then you want to sort of like scribble everywhere, but just like journaling, it's sort of also about like being consistent and then doing that, practicing it every day, like making it a habit. So how did you sort of uh, figure out that journaling was something that, because it is a very sort of niche activity or like visual journaling, for that fact, that not everybody is able to pick that up. How did that came about to your like radar and then you started doing it actively?
I didn't consciously begin journaling knowing that, okay, what I'm doing is journaling. I was doing a bunch of things that later in hindsight, I realized this is journaling. So before me and my friend kept that 6 months diary, we were doing that exchange of letters, which we didn't realize was journaling. And I had read Anne Frank's diary when I was in school, and I was very inspired by that. And I also liked the practice of writing letters. So somewhere, like expressing myself on paper through words was there. And eventually, when I got inclined towards art, then images also followed suit, and together they started coming together to be like a visual journaling thing. But it wasn't a conscious decision earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Rubina has a question. Rubina is saying, can you talk about one of the methods we can try to draw without judgment or worrying about the end result? Like you said, sometimes it is so hard to not judge your art.
Uh, there would be a couple of things. So one is uh, have a space where you are drawing only for yourself. So when you are drawing, don't think of will I be publishing it somewhere or will it be an Instagram post? Because then that brings a lot of pressure along with it. Even in journaling, you will realize that a lot of censoring of thoughts will start happening. So when you are making something, just do it purely for yourself. But at the end of the process, if you feel that something can be done with this, or this could be a fodder for a larger project, then you can recycle it. But going in, don't put yourself into like, will this sell or will this be an interesting Instagram post? Make it for your eyes only. That really helps me. And collaborating with people really helps. So if you have a friend who also struggles to keep a routine, you can be each other's accountability partners. And sometimes if you are low on energy, but they are very enthusiastic, you don't want to kill the vibe, so you might just show up that day, and vice versa. So other people can also keep you going.
Great. Mayu has another question. How can we actually trust our designs as a beginner? Like, I always end up seeing the inspirations and then subconsciously start to copy it, resulting in losing the authenticity of my own idea.
I think copying is a part of learning to an extent, especially in the early years of drawing. You are learning from the masters. So I don't think it is completely not okay to copy. But again, when you are sharing something, like if you are copying something to just learn a particular technique, oh, this is how this guy approaches perspective drawing, or this is how this person treats coloring and character design. You can do it as practice for your eyes only. But if you then copy something exactly the same and then put it on your portfolio or Instagram as your own idea, then that becomes plagiarism. But otherwise, I think initially it is okay. But there are ways in which you can learn to rely on yourself. So you can draw from life, like you're copying from life. Like try to go to places and sketch in like real time, or copy from your own photographs. So when you are copying from somebody else's illustrations, you're already copying the way they are looking at the world. But if you start copying from your own references, then there is your own worldview or perspective there, which is more authentic. So once you start doing that more often, then slowly you will realize you have your own bank of images to draw from, and you are not relying on references from Pinterest or Instagram.
That's a very interesting way to look at it in terms of process, because I remember when I was in photography school and I had the same question that I'm constantly looking at these photographers and I'm trying to replicate their work. But what sort of helped was just to do, I think, and then eventually you start seeing patterns in your own work, and then you know that you want to draw a certain way with a certain weight and look at light a certain way, or you want to say photograph a certain subject. Like I couldn't do portraits, like I couldn't photograph people for the longest time. It was a very weird thing. And that's the first thing that people sort of pick up for the first time, that it is very easy to just like photograph your loved ones or your family or your friends, but I couldn't do that for the longest time. But you sort of, when you just like keep at it and just like trust your instinct, you sort of go back and see that, oh, there is a way that I look at things, and then that becomes your aesthetic or like your way to look at things. I think that is also a good way to go about it.
A batchmate of mine had given me like some good advice by saying that don't copy what you see, but copy how they think, which was very interesting. Like, don't just keep scrolling through Instagram, like hearting it very quickly, but see what is it really drawing you to the image and how that artist is thinking, and try to apply that frame of mind to your own art instead of picking up very surface level, like okay, this person uses dotted line instead of thick black line, not borrowing like that, but just thinking, okay, this person is experimenting with line quality, how can I bring that in my own art? Yeah.
Mohammadi has a question. Can any age people journal?
Oh, yes, of course. There are small kids who do like visual diaries, who come back home and write letters, or who will like talk about their day. And, like, it is an activity that's accessible for everybody. And I think again I'll go back to Linda Berry. Like, she spoke about how drawing is a language that everybody knows. It's not something you have to learn by convention. It's not like you go to school and you learn the alphabet, but you can give a crayon to a kid and they will just like express themselves. So it's only like in formal education, somewhere this idea of this is a talented artist and this is not gets kind of imposed, because you only treat realism as a valid way of drawing, but otherwise it's something like everybody can do.
Yeah. Lindo has a question. Can journaling help create an idea when stuck?
Um, you can try it. It does work at times. So there are certain exercises that really help me. So for writing, there's something called speed writing, which is just stream of consciousness writing, where you are not focusing on the craft, but you just put a timer and you write, and it is your first ugly draft. But you know the essence of what you really want to say kind of falls on paper, and later you can keep twisting and turning the structure of the write-up. Same with drawing. Sorry. There are a bunch of exercises I do, like drawing with your non-dominant hand. So if you are a left-handed person, draw with your right hand, or if you're a right-handed person, draw with your left hand. And it could be anything. It could be people around you. It could be the landscape you see outside your window. But when you're drawing with the other hand, you are not having too high expectations. You are just following the hand and the eye and the mind, and somewhere it helps you like unlock and like like declutter and then just start moving. So I think you don't always have to know the plan ready. It's not like okay, you have completely imagined the artwork and only then you transfer on paper, but as and when you start making marks, slowly you figure it out along the way. So your drawing can surprise you sometimes, like you are not expecting what will happen on paper.
Okay. Uh, Anushmita is asking, how can we start journaling?
You could try something maybe just for a day or just for a week. And you may not even take like a brand new sketchbook. You could just take one A4 sheet of paper, fold it, and create a tiny booklet, and just draw and write. Like, it could just be a friend of mine just at the end of every day spends half an hour to like draw and write about one highlight from their day. And a few years back, I had seen a project where two friends were documenting one happy highlight and one sad highlight. And there's another very interesting project called Dear Data, where two information designers have a theme for every week. So it's like a week of laughter, or a week of goodbyes, or a week of complaints. And they will just take that one thing, that okay, if I've taken a week of smells, I will just track every thing that I smell, and then they figure out a way to present it in form of a diagram. So you could literally take one single prompt and just try it on your own, and don't put too much pressure on the format or the outcome. Just see how it goes and then tweak it according to like how much time you have. Like, do you want to do it every day? Do you want to do it alternate days, once a week? How much time can you give to this exercise? That will help you decide the format and the shape and the specifics of the journaling. Yeah.
Okay. Kriti is asking something about me is that I get super discouraged when I can't draw something right. So can you suggest how to exactly cope with that?
Now, this is something, there is no one quick fix formula. It is something that you have to learn to be comfortable with over time. So obviously, continuing to practice will make your drawings better. But like what I said in the beginning of the session, like what happens to a bad drawing when you make it? It will survive your dislike. So the Kashmir drawings that I showed you, when I had shared it on Facebook after my trip, initially only a couple of friends were liking it, and I was happy with that attention. But suddenly things started happening in Kashmir, and my drawings got a lot of attention, and it became very popular. It got shared a lot of times. And instead of feeling happy, my imposter syndrome like just went high. Like I could see every single flaw in my drawings, and I was like, why is it getting shared? Why are people talking about it? And a friend of mine told me, you think you are being very down to earth, but you are being very narcissistic right now. Your drawings are just a way to have certain important conversations. So can you please chill? And that kind of helped me that okay, a drawing has a lot more function than what you intended to be, and the things that the drawings hold can resonate with a lot of people. So I think every once in a while you will feel uncomfortable with what you draw, but if you figure out ways to trick yourself or just calm yourself, then you have to find ways to continue drawing, because not creating at all is really a shame, and you just have to learn to fight that. Yeah.
Minnie is asking, she says this was a really insightful session. I want to know which sketchbook with lines or blank and colors and pencils are good to start journaling.
Okay. So for my journaling, initially I was using a blank notebook, but because I was doing a lot of grid-based work, later shifted to dotted or checkered boxes, wala sketchbooks. It just became easy to have like ways to divide the page and write text without it going diagonal or in a wrong direction. So I don't have like a specific brand I'm loyal to. You just go to different stationery stores, and if I like something, I pick it up. And again, pens, I keep buying a lot of stationery, fancy stationery. But when I actually sit to draw, I go back to my Unipol black ball pen. So I don't have anything like specific to recommend. I think everybody has like this one or two tools that they feel very comfortable with. So you could just go try different things at a store and see what speaks to you.
Great. Do we have any more questions? If you do, now is the right time to be putting in questions. Soumya, do you have a question?
But I just think, Mani, this was such a personal and such a candid sharing. So thank you for that. I think a lot of the things were very relatable, like you said. You don't know who your art is going to inspire or sort of connect with, and I think a lot of the things are they commonly happen with artists. And I recently read this quote somewhere that I'm constantly reminded of, that as humans, we're naturally able to sing and draw and dance. And then all of these three things, now we put so much pressure on ourselves to become better at it.
Yeah.
And the technique, right? So I think this sharing had a lot of different ways where one could, borrow ideas from you and start their practice little by little. So yeah, just thank you for that. I think it's
Thank you so much.
nice of you to share this so candidly.
Okay, we do have another question. Oh, it's not a question. Muhammad is just saying, Dhwani, I like your idea of writing in patterns and dots, boxes and lines, colors, etc. for personal things.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess we've reached the end of questions and the end of this session. It was a wonderful experience to just like sit through this session, Dhwani. I learned a lot, and I'm gonna give journaling a try tonight. So thank you for taking us through your work, through your personal journey, and how it's been for you with journaling especially. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for joining us today. I would like to thank Samya and everybody else who's stuck with us through the end of this session. Thank you for taking time out today evening to do this with us. I hope you got to learn something as I did. Yeah, with that, I say good night. Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.